trauma is real and trauma can impact us in ways that we can't even imagine. And I'm saying that from both a personal perspective as well as professional perspective.
One of the things I think is unfortunate for people who are growing up in this current generation, like where there's only social media around, there can be that full feeling of having relationships, phantom relationships.
And I think even what you're speaking to right now, Barika, it takes a lot of courage.
As a leader, your team can A, only go as high as you go. B, any dysfunction that you have, you will trickle down to your team. Hi, guys. It's Barika from Simply Unique Coaching, and I am here with Kamesha. And I have had the opportunity to have a conversation with her recently. And it was just interesting to hear her specialty and where she is able to help people in building the type of relationships that they really need to have at work to have people be successful and to want to work with them, right? She also specializes in helping people who have dysfunctional relationships come back together. And so I'll let her share more about that. But hi, Kamesha. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Kamesha Barrett. It is an absolute pleasure and blessing to be here with Barika. I thank you for the opportunity just to share some tidbits in regards to my life. Just a little bit about me. I am a mother of three amazing young men, and I have had an extensive um, work history and life history, let's say that. And over the duration, the things that I have learned and what's come out of both experiences, both professional and personal, is that connectivity and relationships are very important and a very significant aspect of life. If we are disconnected one with another, we don't move with fluidity, we do not move as quickly as we would like to. And there's an emptiness that we start trying to work to find to feel. And so I have found relationship building to be an absolute important part uh, and a very significant aspect of my growth, my development, both on a personal level as well as a professional level as well. And life teaches you. I had to come to a place to understand that I did not know everything, but I also had to make room to learn what I did not know and be willing to acknowledge what didn't exist and then combine the two to really have a true growth and life experience.
That's perfect because actually, as you were talking, a couple of things popped into my mind. So I feel like there was maybe some kind of catalyst that maybe brought this to your attention. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing with the audience, like feel free to share that because I think that that's important for us to know. Like there are points in time in our lives when it's like, okay, we have to make a decision in order to have different results than what we've been experienced or to have a better future.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, when I had the pleasure of you and I had having our conversation, I shared that I came to a place where my professional background is extensive. It's gone from substance abuse, residential care, working for the state, reunifying families, to even individualized home based therapy, and then moving over into like the educational sector. And what I have found over this duration, I came to a place of where would I like to go from here? And I landed on life coaching. What I found in within that experience is it became more important to me to push people along to get them out of a space of where they are actually stuck, and for them to be unapologetic even about where they are in life. And if it was important to them to not be stuck and be able to move forward, I wanted to be a very significant part of that. And I consider that a blessing because no one has to allow you into any aspect of their lives. And when you have someone who looks to you as like a safe space and they are willing to disrobe and they are willing to share, it's something about a sacredness to that, where you don't want to expose all of their flaws, but you want to help them look at their flaws and say that there's so much potential and there's so much growth that can take place there. And if they're willing, I would be willing to walk through that with them. And me even coming to that place, um, having limited mentorship, very young, coming up in during the time when people were, you know, they kept a lot of information either to themselves. You were kind of left out there to kind of figure out some things on your own. And quite honestly, I learned a great deal by trial and error. And later on, I would change the even language around that and say, God, this was the process for me to arrive to my place called here.
A whole lot of, like, I don't know, I don't wanna say, like, light bulbs are going off, but I'm resonating with what you're saying because one of the things I think is unfortunate for people who are growing up in this current generation, like, where there's only social media around, there can be that full feeling of having relationships, phantom relationships, I call them that. They're phantom relationships. You feel like you have a relationship, but you really don't because what you just said is very true. When we have true, genuine relationships or a safe space, that's where you can be vulnerable. And if there's no place where a person feels vulnerable, so I'm gonna say this to the audience, like, if you don't have a place where you can feel vulnerable, I need you to find one because that's where you're gonna actually grow the most, and you have to use wisdom because you can't be vulnerable with everyone, you know? But you have to find a safe space because it's not good to hold all that stuff on the inside. There's stuff that we have to process, and just in having a conversation with someone, it can bring out something that needs to be either healed or needs to be processed through. And then once you process it, then you're fine and you're able to move on. But if you don't process it, you get stuck. You get stuck in that situation or that circumstance. It's important for us to be able to have that safe space. So I say that it's unfortunate for the newer generation just because when I was growing up, how did you make friends? You made friends at school, you made friends in the neighborhood, you saw somebody riding their bike, and you're like, hey, you want to ride bikes together? You had conversations, or you just went somewhere, went to a mall or something, you sat down and you started a conversation. I think that that's a skill set that people are going to have to be intentional to make sure that they are able to actually connect with people, in just general social settings, but then at a deeper level. So, what I want to know next is like, what is like one of your success stories of someone that you kind of maybe they had a situation going on and you were able to help them walk through the dysfunction that they were experiencing and help them to get to a better place? Because I think that that's really important to share.
So I'll speak to one individual um, who had a very rocky upcoming as far as life is concerned. Um, when we kind of walk through their life, they were bullied a lot in school. A lot of it due to appearance, looking very different than their peers and things of that nature. And we all know that being in school, kids can be absolutely cruel. But this one particular person had a lot of twofold things take place. They were kind of getting it in school as well as at home. And so now you have a developing individual who is like, well, where do I fit and where do I belong? I'm trying to make my space or at least create a space here. I'm not permitted to do that. And I'm not being cruel to the people who I am attempting to connect to, but I also don't understand what's going on with me that you would handle me in such a way. And so, over the duration of their high school experience, what they ended up doing was creating this alter personality aspect. And in that, they utilize that persona to be everything that they felt like they could not be as they were growing up over the course of their lives. And this will be later something that would follow them, into their adult life, not realizing in the creating of this alternate reality for themselves, all of the issue, all of the problems that will come with it. Because although you created this space, it did not, it didn't resolve the feelings of rejection, the abandonment. It did not take away the base core, which we would understand that professionally speaking is self-hatred. And we know that when you hate yourself, you're subject to subject yourself to anything, whether you would recognize it or not. And so as life would go on, we found ourselves in these extremely dysfunctional relationships where I'm appeasing maybe emotionally to you, but I can't figure out why you are physically aggressive towards me. And so even in that, that tells me that there's a disconnect of what you even know or understand your value to be. Um, this is a very talented individual, a very creative individual. And I always say you were creative enough where you created this alternate dynamic of a universe to live in. But unfortunately, the loneliness that you felt in reality, you were still yet alone in this space what you created. So having that opportunity to sit with that person and talk with that person, one of the most important things was I shared with this individual was I don't want to get to know your representative. I must get to know who your person is because your person is who I'm actually about to speak to. And so during the duration of that process, I met the broken little girl who was mishandled, who was mistreated, who experienced trauma. And then being able to explore that because this person also had to get to a place where they were even willing to allow me to even touch in some of those areas. And over the duration of time, you had days that were more difficult than others. And the difficult days were sitting with self saying, this is not now something that someone has done to me, but this is the reality of what I have done to myself. And so now, not only is it a process of like forgiving and letting go of the what has been done. And so now I have to sit and I have to now address me because I can't point fingers anymore. Yes, I have had, issue. Yes, there are, things that life has been life in as far as continuing to grow and move forward. But at the end of the day, I now have a different understanding of how responsible I am for my ability to either stay in this place, stay stagnant, be victimized, and speak victimizing information, or do I really want to heal? And if I do want to heal, am I willing to walk through this pain? And so you got that thought process happening, the willingness to do it. And at the end of this, you're talking about someone who loved to engage children, who is a teacher, who then had their opportunity to get into school and start teaching. And they're like, what is this for real? Experiencing something that they didn't think that they can actually stand and walk in. But also recognizing that this was still a part of their healing process because even in the student body that they encountered, they saw themselves. They were able to, say the things instead of re-injuring and how in the ways that they have been injured, like shifting that and being able to speak life into other growing individuals. I had the pleasure of watching this person. When I say when God gives and calls, he gives and calls, tide gaps. She has this niche of working educationally with students, but connecting them as well. And so where they believe I am not enough, or I don't know how to do this, or I can't get there, the patience that wasn't shown to her, she's able to show that patience. The things that were not afforded to her, she was able to pay it forward in them, through them. And so now you have this creative individual who has this mind of the sky is beyond limits. I can create a space, not only for music, but to engage children or even to engage adults very, very differently in ways that I never even thought imaginable. And when I say, when God blesses, he blesses, because everything she did for the people, he turned around and blessed the family. So where there were broken relationships, her inability to communicate, things that we kept inside, she was able to not only convey, but there was safety in now and courage in her standing for herself and saying, this is where I was, this is where I am, but this is where I'm going. And so those feelings of obligation that took away from, her character and our identity, she was able to go back and retrieve those things. And so now it's okay for me not to operate in function like family would expect me to because of this is how we are and this is no, this is who I am. And so I need you to get to know my person. I need you to get to know who I really am, not only so that we can live together, but we can maintain, our connection and we can grow together. The goal is always to shift from a dysfunctional space and place and getting into a place of movement. And I'm talking about becoming the real change. We're not just talking about it, but literally living it out and becoming the change it is that we want to see and talk.
Thank you for the work that you did with her and how you helped her to discover who she truly is as a person, because it was her full self that was presenting itself out to the world, like you say, the representative. And what I was thinking about was really what you're talking about. And I know a lot of people deal with this. I want to make sure we mention this and kind of call it what it is. And that a term just popped into my head, but it's like self-sabotaging coping mechanisms. It's like identify those, because the thing is, whenever we are hurt, whenever we're stressed, whenever we are under pressure, angry, whatever, there's something we're running to. And one of the things we should pay attention to, and even this is a process I've gone through myself, is to pay attention to what do I go to. At one point in time when I was in college, it was like, oh, I was go shopping. And it was like, oh, get something new, the retail therapy. And we can think that that's like the norm, or oh, it's harmless, whatever. But really, it's a coping mechanism. And some people, it can put them into a whole lot of debt. It can put them into situations that they don't want to be in. And so it's like knowing that when life happens, when life is life, that then there are some things that we need to do. We need to be intentional about, okay, when I feel pressure, what do I go to? Maybe I go work out. Maybe I go sit at the beach. Maybe I go hang out with a friend or talk to a loved one, like finding those healthy ways of coping and not find using those self-sabotaging. And unfortunately, really it just depends on the environment we grow up in as to what really skills we have available to us or what strategies we have available to us. So I want to mention that because I know that there are people out there who may be experiencing that. And I would encourage you to sit by yourself quietly for a period of time and see what comes, because what comes out during that period of time is what's actually happening on the inside of you. It's just a lot of distractions, that people may run to, either social media or to entertainment. And I'm not against social media or entertainment, but what I'm saying is like, there are things that we do to kind of quiet that voice that's kind of saying, hey, there's a problem here. We're like, shh, shh,
Yes.
kind of
Yes. Yes. And I think even what you're speaking to right now, Barika, it takes a lot of courage, especially even in your mentioning of social media. What I have found, like the original usage of those platforms, there's always something that kind of comes along the way that kind of defiles it or derails it from what it was originally intended to do. And so, even in that, when you have to quiet the voice, you got to know that a lot of people have found a way to mask and hide behind those platforms as well. It's so it takes something to be able to literally extract yourself from that unrealistic reality is what I call it.
I like
And
that.
really sit with yourself and say, you know what, whether you're asking yourself, what do I really want? Do I enjoy really where I am? Is the circle I've surrounded myself, how beneficial, is that, are you feeding my ego or are you really feeding my soul? And these are not questions that you want to pop, jump into and be like, oh, let me give these answers. No, sit and really think about it. Because some people, who find themselves in those spaces, they're like, oh, I'm fine. And they're really not fine. And what they've done is they've either adapted or adjusted to the dysfunction. And so when you've learned how to live, in that type of dysfunction, then you've convinced yourself unrealistically, oh, I'm cool, and you're really not. That you leave yourself kind of open for the dysfunction you don't want. That's the dysfunction you begin to draw. So even when you were making your point of, like getting by yourself, quieting those voices, that even means quieting, the negative tape playing, that keeps playing in your head. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. My mama said, so and so said, and these things like that. Because a lot of times, people can only give you what's in them, but we don't take the time to listen to what's in them. Well, we'll say, "Oh, that's okay," or there was a saying that even my mother used to say, "Oh, I'll just hear it in one ear, not the other." And I said, "No, not me," because that means that on some level, I've accepted this dysfunction. I don't want to accept it. If I have to accept it, there is beyond toleration. But if I'm accepting it, I'm saying that it's okay. But if my goal is to break this, then I have to understand that it's not okay. It's not okay. And then if you're fine with it, that's one thing. But as for me, this doesn't work for me. It doesn't build me. It doesn't help me, and in fact, it's doing a lot more harm than it is benefit to me. When you're saying like just to be able to sit with yourself, a lot of times, even for myself, when I would hear that, how do you do that? What does that mean? If I'm already struggling with being by myself, you're telling me I gotta go sit by myself some more. Well, I don't want to do that, but this is a different way of looking at caring for you. Sitting down because you're not thinking about anything else except for just where you are and where you want to be. And that takes courage, even to get to a decision making place of if I'm not unhappy or if I'm dissatisfied, what am I willing to do to change this?
And I love that. Wow, that's just so powerful. And there are two things I'm going to hit on because for those of you who already know that I'm a leadership coach, but then also what what we're talking about today, and what Kamisha's talking about, is so important because I've seen leaders who haven't dealt with these issues, and then now they have responsibility for people, and this can be in the workplace. This could be a parent. If you're a parent, you're a leader. If you are leading a project team or whatever. There are so many different forms of leadership. And the thing is, as a leader, your team can A, only go as high as you go. B, any dysfunction that you have, you will trickle down to your team, intentional or not. Intentional or not. So the healthier you are in your head and in your heart, the better everything is going to flow. And I know Kamisha and I had a conversation about, we both have worked in an industry before, and I told her kinda she was describing some things, and I was like, "I know exactly what you're talking about," because I've seen that in that particular industry where people kinda they get into this leadership role and they take this I'm the queen of the castle kinda situation, or king of the castle. I've seen it more with women than men, y at least from what I've experienced and seen, and, in this particular role, and it's in the educational realm. And, it's unfortunate because they they end up hurting so many people because when you hurt the people underneath you, then it's like then if they have a bad day, they can go home and have a bad day with their family and their kids, and then it just trickles down. So as a leader, it's so important that we are healthy. We are healthy. We're healthy. We're healthy. So I'll let you speak to that, Kamisha.
Oh my goodness. I have even personally myself, professionally growing up. Um, I have sat with people who are absolutely unqualified to be in the positions that they have found themselves in. This is where we really begin to nitpick that says, my degree affords me to be here. And I said, but yeah, can your character keep you here and maintain your space? Because if it doesn't mean anything, we can put all our degrees on the table and throw our letters out here as well. But if our character makeup is not what it needs to be, the seat in place that you are in, it will kick you out. And I've seen it more with women than I have with men as well. And it becomes a territorial thing. Then it becomes this contest of I know more than you. We don't know the concept of being able to kind of work together in the understanding that it can't be 20 cooks in one kitchen. It just can't be. But then now I have to understand what my place is, what my lane is, and master thriving in that. And I've also said a good leader who is taking a look at everything around him or her. I placate to the strengths of people, meaning I'm going to put you in something where you can't do anything but thrive because that's what you are desiring to do. But it becomes conflictual because you're looking at a place and you're not understanding that this is where you are. But we can get into so many things with just right there, Barika, as far as growth development and things, because it's a lot that goes into it. And sometimes it can't always be about position and money. And so, even in the educational sphere that I found myself in, I'm looking at, a lot of things where They're like, you know, there's this, to me, false sense of advertisement. It's we're here. We want to do this for the children, and you know, we're going to offer this, this, that, and the other. And if you're going to do those things, then you have to have qualified people in those positions to be able to say that this is what this is going to be. Otherwise, just like anything else, your experience or within the school, that particular school setting or educational sector is going to tell. And so again, I see a lot of people who are in positions that I'm just like, okay, you woke up to just to come to work versus somebody who has come up to fulfill and stand in their call, and actually do what it is that they have literally been created and ordained to do. And there is a difference. Everybody is not a leader, even if you have leadership skills and qualities, but it takes something to lead a group of people in a direction. And you have to be able, your soul has to be built out to be able to sustain everything that comes with it. Because in leading in that manner, it's not just about you, it's everything that is attached to you. You understand? And it's the people. That means that even as a leader, I have to be a creative. I have to be a safe space. I have to know, because if I'm CEO and I've hired a team under me, I have to entrust that everything that my team it has in them is everything that I need. And so I have to trust that you all are going to do what you need to do in house so that I can go out house and continue to bring food and meat back into this one. But if I have to stop every 5 minutes, you know, to address your emotional level, to address your character, to address what we can't, you're slowing down the process. And those are just hard conversations that we don't either like to have, we don't want to have, we're afraid to have, just like we talked about in the beginning. The hardest person to sit with is you, because now you're looking at your good, your bad, your ugly, and you have to admit and acknowledge some things that are there, but it doesn't have to stay or remain that way. But again, you need the courage to be able to change that. You know, and I think when you and I were talking, I gave this a um, analogy of like surgery. If I'm going in and my appendix is bursting, you know, all I feel is pain. In my mind, I just want the pain to stop. But in order for me to get to this pain area, and in order for it to stop, I have to go through a surgical process in order for a fixing of some sort to take place, a repairing. And even in that healing, I still don't feel good once I come out of surgery. You understand? I don't feel good coming out of surgery. I'm still in pain, which is indicative of I still have to walk through that pain to get to that place of healing. But if I'm unwilling, I don't listen to the doctor, I don't take the proper medicine, then I put myself back in a space of re-injury. And now I can't blame, I can't point fingers. The only person that I can look at is me. I got the instructions. I got what it is that I'm supposed to do. Now we have to figure out, why am I not doing this? And why can't I incorporate others, you know, in this dysfunctional process to back me? Because that's what leadership begins to look like. We start looking for audiences so that we can continue to perform in front of them instead of really doing what we said we were hired or we came there to do.
Exactly, making it about us, and really true leadership is thinking about others, it really is, and it's that, like, servant leadership mindset, so and actually you hit the head on the nail on the head because that's really the problem, it's like, what I've seen is those individuals going and it's about them. "This is my kingdom, this is my castle, and everyone must bow down to me," but and that's why they have 50% turnover rate year after year after year.
Yes, or more.
Or
You
more,
replace the whole staff, you
you
know,
know,
or
every
anywhere from 70 to 80% of a staff, because again, you can say you're queen and king of a castle, but if you don't know the inner workings of what it means to rule, you're not going to keep subjects well. I'm just saying.
It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. And one thing I want to mention, and then I'm going to ask you for something practical because I always like giving practical tips. So, so you can think about this. I'll ask you about doing practical tips for how to sit with yourself, even to start that process, because you made a good point. But one of the things that Kamisha mentioned earlier too is with the young lady is that the lady was so gifted and talented, but she had gone through a lot of trauma. And what I want to say to everyone is that if you have had a rough childhood, you've had a rough start at life, you've had a rough season, a lot of times it's really the 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 gifting in you that negativity in the world is trying to combat. It's like, "Ooh, you have the ability to change the world. You have the ability to make a difference." And so you're gonna be tested to see if you really how serious you are about that. And so you're gonna like when we go through this process, we are overcoming all of those negative things to get to who we were meant to be, who we're called to be, who we're supposed to help, and what we're supposed to do with our lives because all of us have a purpose in life. All of us, there should be a vision. And most of the time, at least for me, I notice that what I see is it tends to be shown to people when they're younger, but it comes so naturally to them that they just kind of take it for granted, or something can happen that can kind of stifle that growth. Maybe you were really talented as an artist or whatnot, and someone said something about your picture because they were jealous. So they said something ugly to you about your picture and not realizing that they were jealous. So you stop painting or drawing or sculpting or whatever, not realizing that you actually have talent, you have a gifting, you have something to give to the world to make it a better place. And so, as she was talking about, when we sit down and process and deal with those things and allow the things to come to the surface that need to, then we can deal with them. And again, when you see somebody stuck in an area, that's a lot of what it is. And what can happen is when life happens, it's not the 20, 30, 40-year-old version of you, 50-year-old version of you that's responding, it's the 5-year-old. That 5-year-old is coming out and responding. You're in an adult body, but it's the little girl or the little boy on the inside that's responding to that situation because he got triggered. And so understanding and figuring out what those triggers are and healing them, that really helps. And out Kamisha's like has a lot of degrees and stuff in this. I just I just have learned stuff through life and I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I just am I like to absorb and I listen to people who are wise. People who are wise. So it's just a culmination of many years of me just self-learning, self-teaching, and then just experiencing life, and then also seeing what happens with other people and just being around people. But Kamisha, I want you to tell us if you have some thoughts about that, and then I also want you to tell us about how someone can practically start to walk through the process of sitting with themselves.
Absolutely. To speak first to what you were just mentioning, trauma is real. Um, and trauma can impact us in ways that we can't even imagine. And I'm saying that from both a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective. I am a 17 and a half year survivor of child abuse. Um, I went through an extensive part of my young life, not understanding why I was subjected to particular things, why rejection presented itself the way that it did, the experiences of abandonment, and even as a kid, you're trying to pull on the adults around you in your life that say that they love you, but then they end up being the people who are impacting you and injuring you. So I just want to say to everyone, this is not something I'm guesstimating. This is not something I'm pulling from the air or a book. I'm telling you, I have lived this aspect of life. But this is I'm also proof that this is what happens when you come out on the other side of it. I have went through bumps and bruises. I have ran to people. I shared with you all earlier that it was a lot of trial and error for me. Um, and for a long time, I was a very, very, very angry young lady, young individual. And but I found that when I found someone that I had a genuine connection with, and it was always someone older than myself, who can walk me through some things that even within family, I couldn't find that in family. And a lot of times I know we're taught, what goes on in the house stays in the house, is family, is this. And I said, the one thing family never tells you is that they're going to be the first ones to impact, to hurt you, to harm you, and to do these things that they're telling you to look out for in the world. And so what I had to, or what one of the things that helped me very practically, I spoke to the old seasoned women. Yes, I did. And it wasn't everyone. And I'm telling you, God, it was like he would just send them along the way, just being able to talk about some things that I once was not able to discuss and address, even amongst family. It was not an easy process because I also did some journaling in there, and it's one thing when you're talking it out, with someone, but when you have to actually take that time and you're writing out what has occurred to you on paper, there is a realism that comes from that. And it is something that like this actually happened. But when it came that time came for me to have to sit with me, then it took some time to get there. I journaled, I spoke with people, but not everybody. And I'm gonna keep saying everybody when you're looking around to have that type of connection and that type of disrobement, it's a must that takes place. You have got to assess what is around you, who is around you, because everyone there they're not going to be privy to that kind of intimate aspects of you. I learned to pray, and talk with God. And I'm not sure, what anyone's, religious beliefs are. However, for me, God worked for me, still works for me. I pulled and tugged on Jesus as much as I possibly could, which was how I was able to connect with people in a way. And I just believe that had he not shown me or shown up, I don't I can't even tell you where I would be right now. It led me to counseling, and there's a mentor that I have right now that, my God, when I came across her, and she'll tell you in a minute. And I'm positive she wouldn't mind me saying her name. But I'll give you Roberta. But she told me she'll always say, I'm nobody but Roberta from the plantation. And it was so interesting when she would tell me her life history. And she listened to me. I was allowed to disrobe and talk through some things. And she was the person who taught me not only how to pray, but how to connect. And you know what she said, Barika? She said, Kamisha, lay down your master's degree and then become degreed by the master. I said, ma'am, excuse me? Wait a minute now. Cause I'm trying to validate myself and I'm trying to, be somebody. And these pieces of paper, make me feel. And she said, no, no, no. She said, lay those down and become degreed by the master. She said, it's only in him where you'll be able to not only master yourself, but he'll teach you to interact with his people. And she spoke a great deal to the impatience of individuals. And she said, ministry is not always in a pulpit. And she said, and sometimes you have to understand who he has created you to be. And she said, he's called you to the mindsets of his people. Now you had to go through your own mind trip to even understand where your mind was, to understand what needed to change in order to align with his will and his way. So when you start talking about wisdom, I said, I can sit under that all day. But even in practicality for people who just want to get to a space, I did, in order to get to that place, be willing to sit with yourself outside of people because people bring their opinions and sometimes their opinions are so unnecessary. And people don't know how to listen. And I've been blessed to have people who actively listen to what it is that I'm saying in order to be able not to jump in and answer to give their opinion, but to answer what I've presented to them. Journaling is a very important. It not only gives you an opportunity to get out of your system what you cannot, maybe talk about or address in the moment, but it also gives an account from where you come from, where you can also track and trace to see how you're growing and you're continuing to move forward. And as I said, prayer was absolutely significant in that. And sometimes prayer doesn't always even require your word. Sit quietly and let God minister to you. I'm telling you, even in your quiet, He hears your heart when you don't say a word. He knows. And then in that becomes your responsibility to listen. Listen for what He's saying. Listen for Him to tell you what's a lie and who you are and where He wants to take you from there.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being brave enough to share your story and then sharing the process. And like I said, I always love the practical aspects because that's one of the things that I did pull out of teaching is like, okay, we have the concept, but then how do I take it from day to day? How do I implement it in my real life so I can see real change? And so I'm so glad. I think this is really going to help a lot of people. I'm so excited. I'm so glad we were able to come on and chat today. And just, how can people get in contact with you? I know you're working on some things.
I like personal and direct contact. If they wanted to reach out to me, please, they can email me at ispeaklife2022 at gmail.com. And there is also a telephone number that is attached to that as well, where they can message me and call. That number is area code 918-200-9297. And based on whatever it is that a person would like to share or whatever it is that they may inquire, then we can talk about some other avenues that we can have some touch points on.
Awesome, and I'll make sure that that is on the screen for everyone. So thank you so much, Kamisha. Again, it's been such a pleasure to have you on, and I think that so many lives are going to be changed, and people now have a way of thinking, or even it may have even highlighted where some areas where some people need to sit and think and end the process. So I think that that's going to be beautiful. And with that being said, guys, we're going to make it a great day. Thank you, Kamisha.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.